Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to tonight's question and answer session with regards strengthening Murrumbeena's village feel, project of the City of Glen Eira. My name is Chris Robinson. I'll be your MC for this evening. My job is to help us get through as much as we can tonight and get through as many questions that you might have about the ideas that Council have been working on for the upgrade of Murrumbeena. So I hope you're all here for that reason. That's great. It's been a wet night on the roads and I hope you've got here safely. So without further ado, I'd like to talk through some housekeeping, but before I do, I'd like to acknowledge the Boonwurrung and the Bunurong as the traditional owners of the land on which we met today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and our elders from other communities who may be with us here this evening. So in terms of tonight's proceedings, we will shortly hear from Ms. Rachel Oliver. Rachel is the Group Manager of Property, Environment and Sustainability, and she's the Chair of the Council Working Group leading the work in this regard. She'll be talking through what we've heard, what the designs are and how they've come about. We'll also then have three quick presentations by the teams that have been engaged by Council to provide advice on the designs as they've been emerging. And today we'll have presentations from firstly Julian Zveric, thank you Julian. Julian is an economist with SGS Economics and Planning. Our second presenter tonight will be Stuart Valentine, a traffic consultant from 1 Mile Grid. And our third presenter this evening will be Ms. Claire Martin, who is an urban designer from the consulting practice Oculus. So those three presenters should give you material to think through. And I hope you'll have lots of questions to ask both of Rachel and of the three technical experts or advisors who have been involved in the project. We want to leave maximum time for your questions, so to help me get through as many with you, I'd like you to some assistance with yourselves. So when you think you might have a question, I invite you to either write it down on the card that you have on your seat in front of you. We can collect those and get through as many of those as we possibly can. At the end of the presentations, I invite you also to perhaps raise your hand and a roving mic will be brought to you. And I'd like to also acknowledge their councillors who are present tonight, Councillor Claire Davey, Councillor Jamie Himes and Councillor Tony Athena Tony? Thank you very much, Tony. One day I will get that right. Thank you all very much for your patience. I'd like to invite, when ready? Yep, okay. Rachel Oliver from City Council. Thanks, Rachel.
It's obviously a wild night, so appreciate the effort. Actually, what I will do for about 5 minutes is just touch base on the consultation process. So why are we here tonight? What are we doing? How does it fit in with actually what we've already done? And ultimately, what are the next steps that might lead to a decision? So I guess the first piece of context is that this consultation is actually part of consultation Council is doing across Glen Eira to do long-term planning for its shopping centres. We have definitely prioritised Murrumbeena, so we've brought it forward in the program. It's one of the few neighbourhood centres that's where we're doing consultation at this stage. And in fact, the reason for bringing it forward is because of the major construction works that are going on in Murrumbeena. And what that means is, obviously the place is changing and it's changing in a way that none of us expected. So when Council last refreshed the streetscape, for example, we didn't entertain the idea that that rail line wouldn't in fact be running right through the centre. And there are probably opportunities to, if we did want to improve the streetscapes, so if any works arise from this consultation activity, there are some opportunities to consider doing those in a way that minimises disruption. So, for example, we could ask, we could time some of those works at the time that those footpaths are going to have to be reinstated at the same time. So if we have this conversation now, it gives us a chance to do some sensible things about how we actually schedule works down the track. In terms of how this fits into the broader consultation, these are the sort of stages. So we're actually in stage 4 at the moment on that time frame. So stage 1, we asked you, some of you will remember, tell us what you love about your shopping strip, and that started before Christmas last year and went for a few months. And that helped us develop a vision for Murrumbeena Centre, and I'll come to that in a minute for those of you who haven't memorised it. Stage 2, which was March to April, we tested a range of concepts with you, and some of you will remember this. So we put out, I think, 4 different concepts, and then we also put out a range of variations of those. So different ways we could treat intersections, different ways we could treat Nearham Road. And we got quite a lot of feedback from that stage 2, which I'll run through in a sec. Stage 3 on that is actually a citywide activity. So we have developed a activity centre strategy that sort of talks about the overall, our approach to shopping strips and activity centres in general. So now we're down to really looking at 2 potential designs for the Murrumbeena streetscape, and we have deliberately kept it to 2 for this consultation to try and understand and explore some of the trade-offs. So from what we heard at the earlier stages, actually people wanted a lot of things, and we tried to fit all those things in the streetscape. We actually couldn't fit them all in. So what you see in these 2 designs is essentially 2 contrasting approaches that have more of some things and less of other things, and we're interested in understanding what's most important. The final step, in about October, we're expecting all the feedback from this consultation and the previous consultation activities to feed into a council decision. The vision for Murrumbeena. So Murrumbeena will be a leafy and green local centre with a strong community and environment focus, with a mix of local businesses to meet residents' daily needs. The accessible, pedestrian-friendly centre will maintain a safe village feel and embrace its local history. So that's the aspiration, and really the 2 designs that we've given to you, the intention behind those is to try and move towards that aspiration for Murrumbeena as a shopping centre. These are the things that we have heard, some of the things we've heard, the main themes that have come through in the consultation so far. So stage 1, which was that consultation about tell us what you love and what you would ideally have in your centre, which led to the vision. More plants, vegetation and streetscaping and pedestrian crossings. That there was a real sense that you valued the amenity of the place and which is how it looks and feels. You wanted to foster a variety of local businesses. There was some feedback came through about needing more medical services. Desire for better transport linkages and opposition to sort of multi-storey apartments and new developments. Stage 2, we heard a range of concerns and some aspirations as well. So we heard that you wanted to maintain or increase the number of parking spaces, minimise the impact on businesses and support them. There was concern about increased traffic on local streets, a desire for pedestrian safety, and again a concern about how transport patterns might change. And so again, the designs you've got with you try to deal with most of those, and it's an opportunity tonight to really understand some of the ways those have been dealt with in the designs, and to ask questions about those as well. All the feedback from tonight will go to council. There are other ways you can feedback as well. So our consultation period is open till the 3rd of September, And you are, I guess we invite you to write to us, email us, take part in our online discussion forum, give us a call and ask us to write down what you're telling us. Any of those options are absolutely fine. And we'll collate that and it'll go to council for consideration in about October. They will be considering community opinion, the vision, so whether the designs are moving towards that, and expert analysis as well in that mix. So there'll be a mix of things considered in making that decision. That's probably it from me. Thanks.
So thank you, Rachel. So our three expert speakers we have tonight assembled to assist you form an opinion about the project and about the options. Independent of council, but certainly very knowledgeable in their own spheres or areas of interest. Economics, urban design and transport and traffic have been very clearly matters raised by the community, as Rachel made reference to. After their presentation, which will be a short 5 or so minutes, they will be joining the panel at the front on the stools with Rachel, and then they can become advisors for your questions tonight. Our first tonight is Julian from SGS Economics and Planning. Thanks, Julian.
Thanks everyone. Really good to see such a good turnout today. So as he mentioned, I completed SGS completed the retail and economic analysis, and I just wanted to talk through some of the broader trends that are actually impacting retail economics generally, and then how that applies to Neerim Road precinct specifically. So to really just take a step back and think about some of these trends that are impacting all local centres, and these things are outside of a lot of people's control. You know, Australia is shifting its economic base away from a traditional manufacturing base to a more services economy. This means all local centres, such as Neerim Road, are taking on a much broader role, and you see this, there's banks and real estate agents and a whole range of health services and other community roles that each centre needs to take on. It's also important to consider that the retail economy itself is changing dramatically at the moment, and there's no way to stay the same in this retail economy, and I'll talk through a couple of those. So first, if you think through what people want or what people are purchasers, we see that there's become a huge shift in terms of what consumers are needing, and this is both in terms of the growth and diversity of product, but also a growth in the number of actual services away from goods specifically. So one example is if you think about food. Previously, a large portion of us purchase food. Now we've seen the casualisation of hospitality. So cafes and restaurants are becoming more and more a critical part of local communities. And I guess having locations for al fresco dining is quite important for local centres. They become our meeting places for most communities. We've also seen, I guess, in the last couple of decades, huge growth in consumer products. You know, TVs, smartphones and fast fashion. But I guess in the next iteration of retail, we're seeing, I guess, it coming back to locals, seeing niche products, specialised products and those things, and having unique attributes for individuals. What does this mean in terms of, I guess, the types of stores or the role of actual centres at a local level? One way of looking at retailing is really mission retailing, where you go and you have a particular product that you want to go buy, versus leisure retailing, where you might enjoy the experience, or fast and slow retailing is another way of putting this. And I guess mission or fast or price comparison, these types of retailing behaviours are really being driven to larger store chains, and also larger retail centres, and also online. So if I'm going to look at the cheapest product, I'm usually going to go online to find out where I can find that product. So for smaller centres, the focus is really on these leisure, slow, experience-based retail offer, where you need to have nice, small environments, places where people want to go, and it's a destination that they want to stay at. So when we looked at Neerim Road, we did a retail analysis looking at its current role, its catchment and its competing centres. And that's sort of detailed in our report, so I won't spend too much time on that. But skipping forward to the two concepts, which is why we're all here today, and look at the differences. I think, both of them, what we came through in the report, are a significant improvement, and it's a huge opportunity for this precinct. I think in terms of looking at the different factors that each concept could contribute to and how it aligns with that future role of a local centre, so around, providing a more services, destination-based experience. The analysis that we came to suggested that the concept one probably outperformed concept two across a number of factors by providing more of that destination-based offer. So I'll look forward to discussing it with everybody in a short time. Thank you.
We said we keep it tight. Thank you, Julian. Our second speaker, Mr. Stuart Valentine from 1 Mile Grid, talking through the traffic considerations and options. Thanks, Stuart.
Okay, thank you everyone. Stuart Valentine from 1 Mile Grid. So 1 Mile Grid is a traffic engineering consultancy. We were engaged to provide an independent assessment of both options presented and what that would mean for the various user groups within the centre, including general traffic, buses, cyclists and pedestrians. So I'll give a brief overview of what both options would mean. Before we start, just wanted to bring people's attention to this rather confusing looking drawing. But there are some important details on it. Is there a light on this? Yes, there is. So what this shows is what's proposed to happen along Murrumbeena Road and on Railway Parade. Essentially what is going to occur is there will be some widening on the northeast corner of the road here and some additional traffic lanes on the north approach to allow for a designated right turn lane, 2 through traffic lanes, and then a left turn lane here. There'll also be a little bit of widening on Railway Parade. So that has been considered in both of the options, and that has been included in the analysis we'd prepared. So design option 1. What does it mean for general vehicle movements around the precinct? So as you know, design option 1 would include, would involve converting Neeram Road between Murrumbeena Road and Hobart Road to a one-way situation, eastbound traffic. It would retain a two-way operation on Railway Parade, and it would involve the introduction of a new link road between Railway Parade and Neeram Road, Hobart Road. The existing right turn ban on Murrumbeena Road going into Railway Parade would be retained, so that movement would not be permitted under this arrangement. But all other movements at this intersection and ingress from both directions onto Neeram Road would be permitted. We had a look at what we thought would be the best outcome for this link road, assuming it were to be provided. We think that a roundabout situation up at the Hobart Road, Neeram Road intersection would facilitate traffic movements and also provide the opportunity for pedestrian crossings. What we've done with the link road arrangement is what's called a reverse priority T intersection. What it involves is this movement here being the priority traffic movement, and then having Ardine Street here, which is just covered by a label, intersect Railway Parade with a T intersection, and Railway Parade in turn intersect the link road as a T intersection. So what this would do is it would mean that all traffic movements in this intersection can occur, but the idea being to make it a less attractive route for any through traffic compared to Murrumbeena Road. So maintaining connectivity without making it an attractive route running option is the idea behind that. If we move on, similar to the overall accessibility of the precinct is car parking, how the station car park would be accessed, and what it means for parking provisions up on Neeram Road. So under this arrangement, it would be possible to have a fully directional vehicle access from Railway Parade to the station car park, so all vehicle movements permitted at that location. And then because of the nature of the one-way arrangement on Neeram Road, that access up there would be restricted to a right turn in, right turn out movement. With this right turn being prohibited, if you were approaching from the south, you would use the Neerim Road access, but if you were approaching from any other direction, you would have your choice of which access to use. The other thing that this option provides is the opportunity to increase parking provisions on Neerim Road. With the removal of the westbound traffic lane, there's the opportunity to use that space to provide some angled car parking. This would provide an additional 19 spaces compared to existing conditions, or 16 more than would be provided under the option 1. Sorry, option 2, design option 2. Buses. There are currently 2 bus routes that run through the precinct. There is Route 822, which runs predominantly along Murrumbeena Road, but on the southbound services, what it does is it cuts along Sydney Street, which is just out of frame, then down Hobart Road, and continues along Neerim, and then down onto Murrumbeena. With the removal of the westbound traffic on Neerim Road, that bus service will need to be relocated to Railway Parade. So rather than having this section have the bus stops located, we would put bus stops on Railway Parade, and that would be the southbound route for Route 822 bus services, while northbound could continue up Murrumbeena Road as they currently do. Similarly, Route 642 bus services currently use this section of Neerim Road. Those would also be diverted to Railway Parade. 624, sorry. Was that me being dyslexic on... Oh, I've written it wrong there. My apologies. Pedestrian and cyclist connectivity. So under this option, you would be retaining existing pedestrian crossing movements at the intersection of Railway Parade and Murrumbeena Road. The existing crossing movements at Murrumbeena Road and Neerim Road there would be provided as well as signalised pedestrian crossings as they currently are. And it's proposed to introduce a new pedestrian crossing underneath the rail corridor. That would also be a bike crossing that would link to the shared path to be provided along the entire rail corridor. So that would facilitate east-west cyclist movements through the precinct as well. With the introduction of this link road, it would be necessary to include a signalised pedestrian crossing there to facilitate the east-west movements of pedestrians and also cyclists that come through the precinct. And as I touched on earlier, possible to include some pedestrian crossings in this roundabout design over the eastern, northern and western legs. One of the other big benefits of removing the eastbound traffic from Neerim Road is the opportunity to push the southern curb line north and create a more pedestrianised environment on the southern side of the road. And I'm sure how that can best be used will be touched on a little bit later. So that's a very brief overview of design option 1. I anticipate there'll be comments which we can get to in a moment. Design option 2. So the overview of design option 2 is to retain two-way traffic movements on Neerim Road and to retain two-way traffic movements on Railway Parade. So very similar to existing conditions. What is proposed to be done is to create a more friendly environment through here with the introduction of a boulevard type treatment that can have landscaping and various other aspects incorporated. And as per existing conditions, all movements would be permissible at this intersection, so left and right turn in, and not shown here just because it would look cluttered, but left and right turn out as well. At this intersection, movements would be permitted from the north in and the through movement, while you could turn left, right, or continue straight through as you were heading west. So under this option, very little change from existing traffic distributions, very little change from existing levels of accessibility overall. What does that mean for car parking and station access? So again, we could have a fully directional access from Railway Parade, movements permitted in all directions, and also a fully directional access from Neerim Road, movements permitted in all directions. Once again, access from Murrumbeena Road is dictated by what movements are permitted at these intersections. So if you were approaching from the south, you would need to use the Neerim Road access. This option would incorporate parallel parking on both sides of the road on Neerim Road, similar to existing conditions, but relocation of some bus stop infrastructure, which we'll get to on the next slide, would allow a slight increase in parking, an extra 3 spaces compared to existing conditions. So under this option, there is no need to redivert bus services from the existing routes. So the 8222 bus services could continue to travel southbound along Hobart Road, Neerim Road and Murrumbeena Road, while northbound services would maintain on Murrumbeena Road as per existing conditions. And the 624? The 624 services could continue along this section of Neerim Road as they currently do. Two-way movements permitted. There's opportunity to install bus stops on Murrumbeena Road in this location to provide a convenient interchange with the station. And the option showed new bus stops up towards the western end of Neerim Road in place of the existing bus stops, which is located there and approximately there. So the reason for the shift in the bus stops is just to try and maximize car parking provisions there and provide a still convenient location for those stops. To finish up, pedestrian and cyclist connectivity under design option 2. Once again, we would have a shared path running along the entire rail corridor. Without the road linkage through there, there is no need for that to cross any north-south roads under this option. We would maintain through existing pedestrian crossing movements at the Railway Parade Murrumbeena Road intersection, fully signalised as per current. Similarly, retain signalised crossings at the Neerim Road, Murrumbeena Road intersection, and to allow crossing movements on the shared path necessary to introduce a new signalised crossing under the rail alignment. Under both options, it would be possible to retain the existing zebra crossing on Neerim Road. So that gives a broad overview of what traffic movements, what it means for pedestrians, what the implications for car parking are under both options. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, there are pros and cons, and it's kind of a trade-off in a little bit between what various user groups want.
And our final speaker tonight, talking about the urban design and landscape considerations, is Ms. Claire Martin from Oculus. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. So Oculus is a landscape architecture and urban design practice, and the focus of our work is really about how the built environment can better connect people to each other, and the design of the built environment, can better connect people to each other and their environment. And so the way that we've really undertaken our assessment is really trying to assess from an experience perspective and an amenity perspective. So our starting point was really to look at what we believe are good ingredients for good design of streets, and we really have summarised those under the headings of greening and activation, the idea of promoting traffic calming and pedestrian prioritisation, and also promoting accessibility and legibility, which we immediately identified were consistent with the overall aim and vision for the development of this part of Murrumbeena and the broader precinct strategy, and that the images that we're showing here are really sort of benchmark images. So they're images of the detailed design that still has to come. So at the moment we have a concept design, and that's very high level, and it's actually about the main moves, but a lot of the quality and character of this street will come through the detailed design, which is subject to future design. And so this visualization is an attempt to try and interpret those plan views of how the character of the street might be changed. And so I think in addition to obviously my colleagues in terms of their independent assessment, we were really trying to understand what it will do to the street in terms of how it might perform, how it might encourage people to linger longer. So for both options, we've identified a number of advantages and disadvantages. I think overall our assessment, we felt there were more advantages in option 1, but we feel that both of them have good ingredients for the start of a really good street design. So in option 1, as you can see, you get more access, an extended footpath to the south, which will maximise solar access, and this will allow for more outstands and areas where you could have seating along the edges and potentially some outdoor dining opportunities, being mindful of the future potential activation of this street. So where you have more space for people to dwell means they will spend more time in the street. I think so the other idea of having a greater footpath also allows you to have better soil volumes, and with better soil volumes you get bigger trees, or at least the right sort of structure for the right performance of trees. So the tree would always have to be in scale with the street. But by having a tree that has more canopy, you can actually reduce the urban heat island effect, so your street will actually be cooler. So the more soil, the bigger the tree, the better the character of the street generally, and that will obviously provide some shade and options for, again, the type of tree is a specific detail. The idea of having underplanting will also add character to the street. Both options have that. And the idea of maybe what we call green infrastructure, which is connecting water into that so you could passively irrigate the street trees. And I think on the right, we're looking at, obviously, again, the idea of identity. So identity is always distinct when you're trying to create a sense of place. And the idea of having some sort of flags or identity along the street, and there may be potential for suspended planting or something that could have seasonal change, which would obviously alter the way people perceive the street over time. And so this section is, so you can see the number of advantages in this one were quite extensive. There are, as with all options and all designs, there are some disadvantages. So this one does, as has been already talked about, have a net gain in car parking, but we felt that was a really interesting balance because you end up with more footpath where people can spend more time, but also still more parking where people can do that short stay and drop off. So in this, both options have a net gain in the street. This one in the footpath, this one has a considerably more footpath, but both have options for some understory planting. Actually, sorry, this is not, oh yeah, it is right. And so you can see obviously the clearance and the relativity of how a tree could help structure the street, and that again plays off the canopies. So this one probably has more legible pedestrian zones and areas where you could sit outside of that, so you're getting less pedestrian conflict in this one. And I think probably better sight lines and a little bit less risk in terms of crossing points. The second option has a slight net gain in parking, but overall less parking. I guess we felt that, again, we've tried to sort of assess that there are identity opportunities in both of these options. So you could still have the branding, you could still have the idea of seasonal change, and obviously you've got two-way traffic, so you are sort of better vehicle connectivity on either side, but what that's doing is creating another barrier and another disruption in terms of pedestrian flow. I think also there are limitations potentially to having central median planting. So again, depending on how the road is built, you can get good soil volumes, but generally this would be considered to be less soil volumes, so the trees may perform not as well over time. The idea of having understory planting along that median, again, would have some amenity value in terms of character, but then could also start to create where people try and cross, and there could be tripping and risks. So I do think this one has a few more risks associated in terms of safety. And I think overall, the dominance of cars in this design means that it has less of a village character and less of a pedestrian prioritisation, which is something that we would assess ordinarily quite highly. So you can see, again, there are significant advantages with this, probably a comparable amount of disadvantages from our assessment, which is a lot to do probably with vehicles. But I think this one, our overall sort of feeling with this one was that still really good to have tree canopies, still the potential to cool down the asphalt and the road, so having those benefits. And then the idea of the continuity of that as a green infrastructure still works. But perhaps that it starts to divide the north and the south. And we think that obviously the potential of this precinct development is to actually balance out both sides of the street and to create one character, not two. And so we felt that the other one was potentially a little bit more balanced. I think that's it for our slides.
Thank you so much. Oh, well, thank you very much, speakers. I'm going to invite you to come to the front now and make yourself comfortable. 3rd of September is the closing date for written, email, spoken submissions, so please encourage you to do so. These have been questions posed on the boards prior to, so hopefully many of you have had a chance to let them know, but we'll get through a couple of these now. Then I'd like show of hands or cards or questions you've already written, and we'll get through as many as we can. Yeah? How's that sound? I'll get through these, sir, and I'll come back to you, mate. There's a good one. Question to perhaps you all. Are there any changes proposed to Dunoon Street? Dunoon Street. Okay, there we go.
I'll start with that one. Is that working? Can everyone hear me? With Dunoon Street, under both options, it's not proposed to make any real changes to Dunoon. It will still continue to operate in a two-way fashion with fully directional access from Railway Parade. So all vehicle movements that are currently permitted at Dunoon would still be permitted under either design option.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, g'day. My name's Tim. Is there any chance of having local traffic only, say from Ardine Street downwards towards Poth Road, to eliminate a lot of all the heavy traffic going down there? And also with the event of getting increased car parking within the railway precedent, could we have 2-hour parking please in these streets all the way along here? Because now the parking in our area, we're on the corner towards Street and Railway Parade, is an absolute nightmare.
Good.
None of our people, even at Christmas time, are they parking down in Allen Street and everything else if people are coming up and visiting us, because you can't park there.
Okay, question's pretty clear. What's the chance of an integrated traffic management plan that really addresses not just Railway Parade immediate works, but the whole area of parking in side streets particularly? Rachel, is it kick with you? What's Council's view on this type of approach to local planning?
I'm casting my eye around for Matt and wondering if he's got a process answer to that.
Accidents and everything else.
Is that clear, Matt?
Yeah, it's cool. I guess there's a whole range of operational traffic issues that we can investigate moving forward once we've landed on a physical road design, including a local area traffic management plan and a whole range of different things that we can definitely do. I'd be keen to see how whichever design we land on plays out in terms of traffic, because I'm really concerned about the potential of over-engineering local roads when we don't necessarily need to, but it's definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, certainly more details required there, sir. Thank you. What about rat running? There's a couple of questions that have come through in terms of rat running on Hobart and other areas similar to the question there, sir. How do the options compare in that regard?
Yeah, so with both options, obviously the removal of the level crossing on Murrumbeena Road is going to improve traffic flow along that section of road. We have considered rat running potential in both options. Under design option 1, as you're aware, there would be an additional connection through underneath the railway line between essentially Ardine Street and Hobart Road. What we've looked at doing, as I touched on briefly before with that reverse priority T intersection, is making that movement possible but less desirable than travelling via Murrumbeena Road, which is the preferred traffic route. So making sure that there is still the level of local connectivity provided for residents, but making it an unattractive option for people cutting through the area rather than destined for the area. Now, as part of that, as Matt touched on with his answer before, once whatever option has been implemented, we would expect that it's not a set and forget scenario. There would be a period of review after that, and if there are any issues that do crop up that might be unforeseen at this stage, then we can look at what options there are to mitigate those issues.
There's quite a few traffic. I might just, whilst you've got the mic there, Stuart, I'll just get a couple of, if it's okay with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us about the impact on school safety between the two options 1 and option 2. Have you considered that in your modelling or your investigations?
Yes, we had, and this was a fairly common question from earlier as well, so a good one to bring up. Under design option 2, as we mentioned, there's going to be very little change to existing traffic flows, existing traffic distributions, and existing traffic volumes. Under design option 1, where we have the link road, as I mentioned, there would be an extra connection, which does create the potential to increase traffic on Hobart Road. But the idea is to make that not desirable. So once again, trying to keep... what's shown currently is to have the intersection of Ardine Street, which is the only one that connects directly through to Kangaroo Road to the south. If you're coming up Ardine Street, you would essentially have a T intersection to turn left onto Railway Parade, and then a T intersection to turn right onto the link road. So it's not a direct convenient connection, even though it is possible to make the movement. Now, that's what's being considered at this stage, and as I mentioned, if it was to raise its head as an issue later on, there are local area traffic management measures that could be implemented, for instance, along sections of Hobart Street to further discourage through traffic using that road, whether it be options like speed humps or slow points. There are a number of tools that can be used to try and reduce those traffic volumes and make sure that it's focused to being a local traffic street rather than a through street.
There's a couple of questions that have come through. Perhaps if we just get a couple of mics nearby, and I'll keep going with those, sir and madam there. A couple of questions that have come through about can we have a bit of both? Can we have Neerim Road as two-way and create the link road as well?
Absolutely. So the Level Crossing Removal Authority works considered that option initially. So to have Neerim Road operate as a two-way fashion, provide the link road, and then have Railway Parade operate in a two-way fashion. Now that report considered a number of different treatments along Railway Parade that I understand there was some hesitation about from the community in terms of restricting movements from streets like Dunoon Street and Ardine Street. Those don't need to be implemented. So you could have a cross between these two options where you could have a boulevard treatment facilitating two-way movements on Neerim Road, provide a link road, and then provide an arrangement such as, if we can go back a few slides, sorry, that one will do. An arrangement such as this reverse priority T intersection on Railway Parade while still maintaining access to roads that stem off to the south.
Yeah, terrific, thank you. I'll just go a couple more, and then there's a lady there. Could I have the mic out to gentleman, sir, and then perhaps to the lady, and then over to you, Matt? You have a question, please, sir? Or madam?
Oh, hi. My name's Lisa. I live up in the north near Murrumbeena Road and Dandenong Road, right near the primary school. I am really concerned about increased traffic going up Hobart Road, and you say you will do, speed pumps and things like that. There is already parking on both sides of the road. You're lucky you have to pull over if another car's coming down the other way on Hobart Road these days.
Yep.
There are so many three-level apartments being built in all those side streets of Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and no one parks in their underground car parks. You have a look at the car parking on Murrumbeena Road with all those apartments. They don't want to go underground. It's much easier just to go out in the side street. I cannot park outside my house at all because of all the buildings, the offices on Dandenong Road who can't park on Dandenong Road, so they come and park on Brisbane Street. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't even get down Brisbane Street because of the primary school and the parents picking up their kids. You need to be there at those times of the day to see how busy all those side streets are up in the north end of Murrumbeena.
Thank you.
This is just ridiculous.
Thank you, Lisa. I take that as a comment, but also a question perhaps more broadly is, what role perhaps has council got involved in considering not only just the developments that occur regularly outside this project, the multi-storey developments and the users of other facilities, commercial areas. How can council influence, I guess, the management of traffic and those challenges that clearly residents 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 are experiencing in the local area?
It's obviously exceptional times at the moment with the amount of construction in Murrumbeena, but we will, I guess in any time, whether it's now or in the future, our traffic guys are able to take a look at those local issues and see what they can do. And sometimes there are things that can address those local issues, and sometimes it's really challenging, but we will pick up any of those and do what we can do.
So the points are very well made, ladies and gentlemen. Sir, could I have a question from you, please, sir?
Yeah, sorry, can
It's
I
okay.
hold it? Because you're freaking me
She's
out.
got it, sir. Yeah.
Look, my view of Design 1 is it flies in the face of one of the council's objectives to foster and support local business. And I'll tell you why. You make it virtually impossible for anyone coming from the Poth Road end to get to the shops without some sort of massive convolution. Secondly, you make it one way, so by definition, you're removing 50% of the traffic. A lot of the businesses in the area rely on visual stimulus and recognition. Also, just in passing, a lot of the businesses in the area, I've noticed, have petitions going against the one-way sort of concept. And look, thirdly, all the bus stops and all the rest of it, you're moving them further away from retail. So, I'd actually like to see you go back to the drawing board and come up with something better. I mean, two-way has to be preserved along Newnham Road. The whole point... The whole point of the monstrosity that's being forced on us that's called Skyrail was to make traffic, or to alleviate traffic congestion, both along Newnham Road and Murrumbeena Road and everywhere else. And it seems to me that council just hasn't picked up this message.
Thank you, sir. Great points. I might just confirm the very clear clarity on the preference for the two-way transport in these. Are you a trader, sir?
No, but I'm very good friends.
Very close with traders. Julian, just from an economic and business and retail impact perspective, did you give some consideration to which of the options may be more or less impactful on businesses, or which one may in fact stimulate trade?
Yeah, definitely. That's something that we looked at, and I think in terms of a small local centre like that, one of the key things that we considered is its role in terms of becoming a destination or an experience-based shopping centre. And by having the additional car parking spaces as well as the wider pedestrian area and options for, cafe or alfresco dining, that sort of aligned with the future trajectory of a lot of retail trends. And while both options do provide improved amenity, this one we thought would be better for some of those local shops going forward.
There's clearly different views on that one, I think, sir. We've got a question, being patient down the back there. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, could I ask the traffic engineer, how is it going to be possible to make traffic along Hobart Road more difficult than it is at the moment? And secondly, I would like to implore our political masters who are present tonight to at least get one conceptual idea about this whole redevelopment correct, and that is by adopting option 2 and not option 1.
So when I say make traffic movements along Hobart Road more difficult, is the goal is to make them less desirable for through traffic. So vehicle movements not destined for within the centre. There are a number of traffic management options that can be looked at. There is not a scheme devised as yet. Options include things like speed humps, horizontal slow points. So you could even look at implementing one-way sections if the need was. But what I'm saying is, I think there would need to be a further study into it before any scheme is devised. Those are just examples of options. As I said, at this stage, none of those are currently under consideration for that section of Hobart Road.
Right, thank you, Matt. Can I have a question down here, the sky blue and the silver hair? Just if you wait, sir.
Question to Julian. You mentioned that your whole thrust is to attract people to the area for the traders. It appears to me that there's not enough consideration and evidence that traders that rely on passing trade are going to get anything out of a one-way solution.
Thank you, sir.
The two-way solution does provide increased traffic through that neighbourhood, and you will get the passing trade. But increasingly for these small local centres, we're seeing a destination decision, and that's where the one-way traffic and improved environment could provide a benefit that offsets that, while both of them do provide that opportunity.
Thank you. A couple of questions about the urban design. I'll get this. I think the topic tonight is transport and traffic and management, but can the footpaths really be extended on both sides to allow for trees, and will they in fact survive?
So I think with these options, the first option has an extension to the footpath on the south side, and then the first one, my apologies, the first one has an extension to the footpath on the south side for the provision of trees, and the second option has central median trees. So if you were to try and extend the footpaths on either side to include trees on either side, it would come at a cost to parking. So yes, you could extend the footpath, and yes, you could put trees in, and again, that's about the detail of how you document those tree pits. But you could certainly get 2 rows of trees in, but you would do it in the outstands. So you would take some of the net you only have 3 net increase parks on option 2. And so you'd only get trees in where you were prepared to lose some parks. So it would be the trade-off between the 2-way option and, more trees, which is more amenity.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Can I have the microphones? There's over here first, if I have Sir, and then Tess, are you on top of this? Sir there. So first over here, Sir, thank you.
Yep. Hi, my name is Adrian. First, I'd like to start by making a comment. I think personally the option 1 with the link road has a lot of benefit, and I think we should consider that, because what we're trying to do with getting rid of the level crossings is to improve the flow of traffic, and without the link road we're not doing that. I'd like to see some further consideration of a joint option 1 and option 2, where there's a blending of the 2-way street appeal, which is obviously what the traders want, but where we can also maybe get rid of some of the side parallel street parking. I mean, are we really that sold on 5 or 6 street parks that are parallel that we can't consider that that they're moved further down the road to get the 2-way traffic on Neerim Road and to also get the link road? So a combination of option 1 and option 2.
Yeah, great, thank you. Just perhaps a question to council on this. If there is a significant level of interest in a hybrid version of option 1 and 2, is that something council can at this stage consider?
Yes, is the short answer.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Okay, and so to give you confidence that that is what people are looking for, you'd like to see submissions to that effect?
Absolutely. So we'll compile all the feedback we get, and if we hear that, we'll obviously be sharing all of that feedback with Councillor Oars, who'll be making that decision and ultimately.
So really important.
So this is intended as the final consultation stage, and we'll take all the feedback from this stage, but we're not expecting another consultation phase beyond this.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Sir, down the front with the microphone, thank you.
Just a question around option 1, which will push increased traffic into Railway Parade and buses. What consideration has been given to pedestrian access from Dunoon Street to the railway station? There's a lot of pedestrian flow that goes up Dunoon Street to the railway station. So with increased traffic, I'm going to be taking my life into my hands crossing Railway Parade every morning.
Yeah, thank you. So pedestrian safety, particularly children, access up Dunoon. Any thoughts or reflections on that, Stuart?
Yeah, so there will be pedestrian crossing opportunities on Railway Parade. The obvious one being a little bit west of Dunoon Street at the Murrumbeena Road intersection. There will be a signalised pedestrian crossing at that location to facilitate. So that's for station access. So a short trip to the west, cross at the signals. For school kids heading north up Hobart Road, you can travel along the southern side of Railway Parade. There will be pram ramps provided to cross Railway Parade there, which is going to carry lower traffic volumes than the western section of Railway Parade. And then they can continue north up the link road, and there will be a designated crossing facilities to help them on their way to school.
Stuart, is there, just if I could, by way of clarity, what level of extra detail planning is done before these sort of local traffic measures are implemented?
There are a number of warrants in terms of installing what type of pedestrian facility it is, and it's based on traffic volumes, pedestrian volumes, vehicle speeds. So there's a range of planning that needs to go into what an appropriate type of treatment will be. What we've shown there is what we anticipate it will be, having done a high-level assessment of it. And the reason that we've got the signalised crossing across the link road, which is a necessity just to allow that bicycle travel east and west. So there has been some thought put into it based on pedestrian volumes and traffic volumes.
So more detailed work would need to follow before you started implementing those types of works. Yeah, thank you, Stuart. Sir, in the middle, thank you. Matt, sir.
Yeah, hi, my name's Warwick. Just a couple of comments, I suppose. If the link road was introduced, you've obviously got 3 extra crossings there to consider, the ones at both ends of the link road and the one in the middle, which obviously slows things down. You're also creating a slowdown of the flow of cycling and pedestrian traffic along the corridor under Skyrail, which I think wasn't the plan. You already have the main arterial flow with Grange Road, Coonang Road, Murrumbeena Road and Poth Road that is supposed to all be alleviated with Skyrail. I don't see any necessity when those are all going to flow an awful lot better and deal with the north-south flows for the link road. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all in terms of that. There's already comment that with the new ban of a right-hand turn from Kangaroo Road into Murrumbeena Road, which incidentally, I live in Ardine Street in the block between Inland Road and Railway Parade. I wasn't advised that that traffic change was going to happen. Apparently people on the other side of the roundabout needed to know about it, but people, you know, a little bit further down
So
weren't told about it by the council.
I'm conscious, is there a question there specifically you'd like to ask?
Well, it's just a comment. Well,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
the question is, the other question is in stage 2 of this whole process, I think more than 70% of the surveys that you got back said that stage 1 wasn't acceptable. So you've already had a response that 70% don't want stage 1. Why are we sitting here talking about stage 1 again?
Thank you,
Stage
sir.
4.
I presume you meant you referring to option 1 of the 2. Yes, thank you. Is there reflection on that, Council, just in terms of process?
Look, we didn't expect to be doing this round of consultation, you're right. So we were expecting to do stage 1 and to get enough feedback. Actually, what we discovered you're right, so people indicated that they'd prefer no change. What we also discovered, though, when we read through everyone's comments was often they said, I'd prefer no change because, and some of those becauses we think these designs are able to address or solve, and that some of their things people said they wanted, like more trees and more parking, we've actually done some more work and gone, we think we can get some of those in. And so we thought it was important to come back and actually test what's most important, and that's the reason for doing this.
Great, thanks, Rachel. I'm conscious to get through as many questions as I can. Tess, have you got someone there waiting gently, patiently? Then you've got another question over here, thank you.
Hi, my name's Anne. Acknowledging that you've been asked to consult on designs that have been given to you, I was wondering, Julian, the things that you said that were going to draw people to the shopping strip with a widened footpaths and things like that, could we have a design that would bring those things together as well as having a two-way street? Because I'm hoping that it's not just option A or option B or design 1 or design 2 that we've got the option of. Is it possible to have some of the things that you think is really important for a growing, vibrant village that could have two-way street?
Thank you for the question, Julie.
I was asked to assess those 2 options. I think there's definitely an option for a hybrid between the 2 that could provide some of the benefits of a quiet sort of village shopping mall type experience. But I guess with 2 lanes of traffic, there's only so much space that you have there, so there is compromises that need to be made.
Yeah, and I think, I do think it is a good thing to consider that part of the consultation process is to capture both stage 1, which was about greening, which obviously both of these options do provide more trees, and the idea of amenity and connectivity. So I think that obviously a lot of the discussion today is about parking. So obviously maintaining parking is, is about the two-way, my apologies, is more about the two-way aspect and less about parking is what I meant to say. And so the two-way aspect does have a moderate gain in parking and obviously not very much. And then, as I said probably previously, one way of looking at that is if parking is not as critical to the community, but people do want more trees and they do want the idea of people to spend more time in the street and for the character of the street to be improved, then it would be possible potentially to have a hybrid option, which doesn't have the trees in the middle, which again, we were not super supportive of that because we felt it actually disrupted the character of the street. And then you could actually have a few outstand areas where you could still have outdoor dining opportunities and put trees in there and some understory planting, but you would just lose some parking. So I think that's what is an interesting thing about having these discussions, is that the way we tried to set up our review was to say that good streets do certain things, and that is a combination of creating access, connectivity, places to literally stay, and activated frontages. And so both of these options do that, but it sounds like obviously it comes at a cost. And so it's always going to be a balance, in particular with trees. It is a trade-off. So I think the idea of a third option is something that, in principle could be explored.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Claire. I'm conscious of getting through as many as we can. Tess, you've got a question there, and you've got another one there. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, sir.
In both options, you've got the new traffic lights under the sky rail for pedestrians. And I'm just thinking, you're now going to have 3 sets of lights, the ones from Murrumbeena Road, the ones from Neerim Road, and now some push-button lights. The whole idea was to improve the traffic. Every time a cyclist comes along or a pedestrian pushes a button, we're just going to get, not as bad as it was before, but isn't that too many? And you sort of said before you can walk from Dunoon Street to the crossing. Can't you walk from the sky rail to either Neerim or Murrumbeena Road, or cycle to there to get across?
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Timing, sequencing of crossings,
Yep,
etc.?
absolutely. So the primary reason for the new crossing under the sky rail is to facilitate cyclist movements. It's not legal to ride a bicycle across a pedestrian crossing. There needs to be designated cyclist lanterns to facilitate that movement. So that's the main reason for having that on the shared path alignment. As far as it creating any extra delays, the benefit that you've got with a pedestrian crossing compared to a train is you can control when the pedestrian movements happen. So those pedestrian movements across Murrumbeena Road will all be coordinated. So they happen when the east-west traffic is flowing from Railway Parade to Neerim Road, or vice versa. So it have very little impact on through traffic on Murrumbeena Road because it is time separated by the traffic light signal phasing.
Okay, thank you. Question with you, Matt.
Good evening. My name's Andrew, and I live in Hobart Road. I've lived in Murrumbeena since the mid-80s, and my kids go to school in Hobart Road. My concern here is that the project appears to have been focused on the small retail strip in Murrumbeena to the detriment of the rest of the community. So I suppose my question in the end is aimed at you, Rachel. Tonight at 7 p.m, the feedback was 80% in favour of design option 2 and about 10% looking at option 1. So for yourself and for the councillors in the room, what's it going to take this link road off the table?
Okay, perhaps we just hear the answer to the question, perhaps from Rachel. And
hang on, because the link road is an east-west link road. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, I will, but just so she can address it in the same question. What's wrong with the link road? The link road is an east-west link road.
If I could, Rachel, thank you.
Essentially, look, the next steps are that we pull all of this together and the feedback gets considered by council, and so that decision will come about in about October. Yep.
Okay, so
so my job is to run a transparent process, and I guess I can explain that process. I'm not the decision maker, and my job is to get the information to the decision makers.
So clearly, in the staff and the experts here today are helping to form an opinion. If you're forming an opinion on the link road and the other option, please let council know. That's important that you do. You say, sir, that it's already 80% in favour. I think that's a very clear message. If it's the same message tonight, council needs to know that. We've got a question down the front here. Thank you, sir.
2 quick points about Dunoon Street.
Thank you.
The street is so wide it needs a pedestrian refuge in the intersection so people can cross one half, then the other safely. And it needs to be concrete so drivers don't just drive over a painted island. And 2, there should be a zebra crossing at the end of Dunoon Street for for the passengers from people going to and from the shops and the station from that part of Murrumbeena, because people don't want to walk through the car park or along the shared path with the cyclists, so they should be able to cross on a zebra crossing on the railway parade side, just like they can on the Neerim Road side.
Okay, so there's we'll take that as a comment, sir. We'll take that as a comment. Thank you. Really good point, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Walter. I've got a couple of questions about first of all the parking. We're told we're getting a gain of 3 or 19 car spaces. Well, that's not actually accurate, because there used to be 9 spaces that have been taken away from us already at the Murrumbeena Road end of Neerim Road. So there were 9 spots in there, so we're already 9 down, so we're not going to be getting another 12 or whatever. The second thing is the northbound bus stop at the intersection of Neerim and Murrumbeena Roads. Could that not be placed underneath the tracks and therefore not intrude actually into the road space? And the third thing is that the southbound 822 bus, I believe it goes its current circuitous route so that it's got a bus stop in Neerim Road. Does it need to do that, or could it just continue straight down Murrumbeena Road and use the bus stop on Murrumbeena Road Railway Parade?
Thank you for the questions. Any quick reflection on those suggestions or questions, Stuart?
Yep, on the northbound bus route, given the constraints with the works on the station, it's not proposed to alter the curb line on the western side of Murrumbeena Road. So even if the bus stop were to go under the rail corridor, there's not a great deal of scope to have a facility clear of the roadway. With the southbound services, look, that's a discussion that would need to be held with PTV and the bus operator to determine whether those services would be redirected to run straight down Murrumbeena Road rather than doing the loop through Sydney Street and Hobart Road.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid time is running away from us, but we do have time for a couple more questions. We've got a gentleman here and a final question down the front. Thank you very much. Sir?
Hello, yes, I'm James.
Hello,
would you
James.
mind putting up design number 1? Okay, now I live on the corner of Ardine and Railway Parade, just where you are, that's it. And of course, as you can imagine, living in that house, we really don't want a link road. Now, we also too know that we've lost the car parking up near the toilets, up there. And we know that the council are very, very keen to get that bit of tarmac, to get that bit of road, that bit of land from the railways. Well, why not actually, instead of turning it into a road, turn it into a short-term car parking for the shoppers?
Okay.
So no road at all, it is a car park.
All right, thank you. Comment or reflection on that? What's the potential?
Yep. Yeah, look, our understanding is that in either option there will be a slight change to the provision of car parking, and how that car parking is used in terms of the restrictions that are in place hasn't been nailed down at this stage. It's still open for consideration. So whether any additional car parking that would come as a result of either option or any other alternative options that come up, how that would be restricted, who it would be intended for use, hasn't been decided at this stage.
Thank you, Rachel.
I was just going to say we'll actually take that question on notice. I'll try and get you a better answer.
Yeah, great. So just on that note, there are many questions that have not been answered tonight. I've seen many hands up. Our mics have tried to get around as much as they can. Time has beat us. On your seat when you arrived was a feedback or question form. I'd really encourage you to do that, but we've got one final question down the front. But before we do, I want to remind you of that do let council know about these particular questions. And we'll have our final question for tonight, Madam. Thank you.
My concern is about parking in the area. Already we've got an increased population since the rail works have started.
Yes.
The previous car parking was inadequate. The car park was filled very early. Anyone who wanted to go at 9 o'clock couldn't get a parking space. Is there, and with a more desirable shopping centre around there where people want to linger, what's the provision for additional parking in the station car park precinct? Is it going to be made 2-storey underground? Are there going to be provisions for short 1 hour and 2 hour parking, as well as all day parking, and increased disability parking to make this whole place more accessible?
Great, thank you. A very important series of questions. Who'd like to take that broader project question on, Rachel, in terms of the car parking broader project response as well?
Look, the short answer is most of the area you're talking about isn't in council control. So my understanding is that most of that car parking is intended by the state government for commuters, but we will double check that and get you an answer from them and post it on the website.
Great, thank you all for your amazing questions. You're turning up tonight. I'd like to, firstly, could you join me in a little golf clap for our presenters? Thank you very much, Julian, Claire and Stuart. Very well done. A reminder that the information you've heard tonight, there'll be follow-up, Rachel, in terms of online, so make sure you register online to receive updates as well. Is that correct?
Just a reminder about the consultation process from here. Feel free to leave your card with a question and contact details if you like. We've got a box near the door on the way out. You can drop it in that. I guess our commitment is to come back to anyone who's asked us to with an answer to your question, and we'll try and do that pretty promptly so that you have time to take that information on board and still give us feedback by the 3rd of September. Absolutely. So you can do it by email, you can do it on our online forum, you can leave us a card tonight, you can give us a call when you think of something new.
Thank you all very much. Our time is finished this evening, but I wish you all a very pleasant and safe trip home. Thank you all.